is just fantastic. Captain's log, subject 220512.7. It's now 35 kilograms after conducting a thorough search of crewman Bork. I've never seen Diocta look so happy pulling out his entire arm from a Ferengi's no-no balloon knot. I was going to sedate Bork until the investigation is complete so that he could recover. I've decided against that. Hello everyone, welcome to the exhibition of stupid people. Today I'd like to start with the town of my birth, Crawley. This was sent to me on my friend Mitch's Discord server by that crime guy. A Megon, ex-Crawley player, alleges dressing room was segregated on racial grounds. Now that has my attention. And if you don't know, Crawley Town have a football club. They're not very well known, they're hardly the most successful. It's not really surprising because to get anywhere in football you need a lot of money. So included in that tag is an article from Sky News. Crawley manager John Yems was suspended by his employers less than a fortnight ago in light of what the club called serious and credible allegations that he used discriminatory language and behaviour against his own players, which led to Crawley, the PFA and FA conducting separate investigations. This all came to light from a former Crawley Town player who alleged to Sky that within the club's changing room it was segregated on racial grounds, with players from ethnic minorities being made to change away from their white teammates. 7 Crawley players since have come forward with allegations that the club's manager used the aforementioned discriminatory language and behaviour against his players. Understandably, when you make allegations like that, some would want to remain anonymous because they don't want it to impact the chemistry in the locker room, and also they don't want to draw such negative light onto themselves, especially the internet. We do get quite volatile on accusations. Last month, Crawley was bought by some new American owners, and they held a fans forum at the ground, but supporters were told they could not ask questions about the matter because of ongoing investigations. Now I do think that was slightly wrong. If the fans want to ask about it, they should be allowed to ask about it. You can always just say in response, it is under investigation. What fascinates me about those that now own it is that Preston Johnson and Eben Smith bought it with money raised from cryptocurrency investments, which is quite fascinating because cryptocurrency at present is on the front page of most news websites because it's going through a hard crash. Anti-racism campaigner Sean Campbell told Sky News that if true, these allegations, then this would be apartheid in its latest form, and in the UK, it belongs in the past, not in the present and not in the future. It is an ultra low point in the fight against racism and discrimination. As a consequence for everything that's happened, John Yems has actually been sacked as manager of Crawley Town. The investigation though is still ongoing, but what makes this really interesting is John Yems has offered his services to 2 clubs in League 2 since then. So while he denies the allegations, he's putting out feelers to get a better job. And I should say, for the sake of it, the 2 clubs that he has applied for have expressed no interest in pursuing his informal application, mostly because of the FA investigation that could well ruin what little career he had as a manager. So next, let's talk about somebody else within the realm of sport who looked a bit like an idiot recently, and I just want to point at it and ask a few questions. Sir Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton is arguably one of the greatest drivers ever. His record would support that, and in before someone says, his record also proves that Mercedes have had a monopoly on the game for quite some time. Mercedes also employ tactics like many other teams that one of their drivers is clearly number 1, even if the number 2 has the potential to become number 1 for one season. And when that does happen, don't worry, they go out on a high. Nico Rosberg is a legend. Second generation after all. Lewis Hamilton as a race driver is coming to the end of his very much star-studded, glittering, celebrated career. For his career, he was knighted, so he is now Sir Lewis Hamilton. Congratulations. Lewis Hamilton has become more of an activist of late, something which I find very cringy, especially when you see the gestures he does, the ideas he espouses, and what he actually accomplishes at the same time. So why is he stupid? Well, I've already said it really, but there is another reason, another one, and this one intrigues me because I couldn't quite work it out. In this picture you will notice Lewis Hamilton at a press conference, wearing 3 watches. Now, I know some people sometimes struggle to tell the time, but I had thought perhaps this was a bit of a Back to the Future style thing. Double tie, but in this case, triple watch. Or maybe one is a compass. The other, maybe it has a flip phone inside it. Or perhaps it has some eyeshadow underneath the dial. Turns out it was actually a protest. Lewis Hamilton does like his protest. He did some Black Lives Matter kneeling things as well. Congratulations to you. The protest is because the FIA, who run Formula One, have proposed a ban on jewelry while racing. There was also one when it came to certain underwear. It has to be approved underwear, which I will admit, the idea of non-compliant underwear is quite laughable. But when it comes to driver safety, I do get a point. I just find it a tad fascinating it took them quite a long time to realise that perhaps they need these in place to protect the drivers. Driver safety hasn't always been at the forefront of their minds. And we know this because, well, drivers have been wearing jewellery for a long time. Some take great umbrage with having to remove their wedding ring. Where I do think there might be some exceptions that should perhaps be considered, it is certainly worth discussing. Lewis Hamilton's version of a protest, though, is just to turn up to every press conference wearing everything he owns. Because apparently that's how you protest. Looking like an absolute div or a budget rapper light. Also, considering he's fallen down the pecking order, I don't think his protest carries as much weight as he thinks it does. Just thought I'd insert that before we move on to another person I guess involved vaguely with sports, but more entertainment. Let's talk about the big guy, Ryback. Ryback was a failed attempt at Goldberg whatever .0 we had gotten to at the point that Ryback was pushed. Ryan Reeves, aka Ryback, was given an undefeated streak against all these bums and jobbers, up until it hit a bit of a moment when put in a world title picture against CM Punk, or was it just a match, where you got to see just how inept he was, dangerous he was, injury prone to others he was, reckless. CM Punk flayed him, being heavy-handed and dangerous to work with, but also not as strong as he looked. His shell shock finisher was a budget version of the jackhammer because he was too weak to simply lift them off the ground into a suplex position and hold them there. He got given a major push because Vince McMahon has a hard-on for muscles, yet every single time he does it, he ends up being proven absolutely moronic because they aren't very good at carrying, well, any wrestling event really. I know someone might now say, oh, what about Reigns? He's doing well. Isn't he leaving in a year? Oh, what about John Cena? Ah, yes. The tried and true method, 5 moves and done. Fantastic. Ryback left the WWE a few years ago because of a contractual dispute, I believe. Many rumors circulated he had a fight with Brock Lesnar, which I believe was not true. Ryback, since leaving the WWE, has absolutely flayed them on a daily basis. It hasn't exactly helped him though. When he asked his followers where they would like to see him wrestle next, they told him to retire. Since leaving the WWE, Ryback hasn't really wrestled anywhere. Before the WWE though, he also didn't really have much of a presence, something which Booker T has called him out for. He's only been with the WWE, and since leaving he has been very salty about leaving the WWE. Ryback has made headlines for changing his diet, going vegan, changing his appearance, starting his own nutrition company, I believe. But he's also drawn headlines for comments made about Vince McMahon. Now, many of us will complain about Vince McMahon because he doesn't really know what the fans want, and he continues to give us everything but what we want, unless it involved Daniel Bryan and the other few very rare occurrences where we get what we want, but then he ruins it by deciding, I'm going to pay someone who's a lot older to come back and absolutely blitzkrieg you and ruin your gimmick entirely and show that kayfabe means shit to me. Characters, mythos, no one needs that. We want Goldberg. Said nobody ever, unless they're from Saudi Arabia apparently. So Ryback on Twitter, at Vince McMahon, like most promoters, has an insatiable urge to have control. He had no control watching his mum get beat up as a child, which is a horrendous thing for a kid to witness. As their whore mum tries to make ends meet, Vince has failed to evolve. F you, old man. Now, why would this rub many people up the wrong way? It might have something to do with the fact that Vince's mother passed away in January of last year at the age of 101 from natural causes in her sleep. So I mentioned Booker T's comments on Ryback. During his Hall of Fame podcast, Booker T said, when you're talking about somebody that you don't know, that right there for me is taking it to another level. Saying something just personally, just outright stupid, nasty, however you want to call it, My thing is he's looking for somebody to blame. Okay, I have no problem or personal issues with Ryback or anything like that, but I'm not someone that hides up under a rock or anything, or that's afraid to tackle a situation like this one right here. My thing is, Ryback didn't make it in the WWE, right? That's a fact. Further commenting on the fact that Ryback didn't really do anything on the independent scene pre or post his release. So pre-WWE and post leaving the company. I will say Ryback is well within his right to say anything he says, even if it is in poor taste, but when you look at what he tweets and what he says on Instagram in video form, you can tell he is still incredibly bitter towards Vince and Triple H. He is bitter because he's not there anymore. The problem he has is he clearly wants to go back, but he won't admit it, while simultaneously doing nothing to prove he is worth their time, because he, I believe, thinks he's better than that, i.e. the independent scene. Companies like AEW won't take him on anyway. He might get lucky with TNA. He'd probably get lucky with Ring of Honor, maybe even New Japan if he actually went outside the box. But I doubt it because everyone knows him as reckless, dangerous, heavy-handed, and he is likely to put you in a hospital.